Happy New Year, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. As we begin the new year, we can't help but reflect on all of the wonderful guests and topics that make Another View your favorite program to tune into at noon each and every Thursday. The Another View crew works hard throughout the year to educate, entertain, and enlighten you. Whether it's history, culture, politics, or health, we bring you insightful conversations about how these issues are viewed in the Black community. By hearing and sharing Another View, our goal is to increase understanding and narrow the racial divide. When we return, we'll bring you segments from some of last year's most popular shows, so sit back and enjoy the best of Another View 2024, right after this national, regional, and local news from NPR and WHRO News.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the best of Another View 2024 edition. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. We begin our look back with an intimate conversation with a Norfolk power couple, Shawn Washington and Jessica Larche. She is the evening anchor on WTKR News 3. He is the Economic Development Director for the City of Norfolk. The Washingtons shared how they balance life, love, and high-power careers and the role of faith in it all.
I'm just so grateful. Both of us serve this community in different ways. And so, and we have done so at the cost of being able to see each other during the week. You know, I've been at Channel 3 14 years. I spent a decade of that on the morning show. And so that meant I went to bed at 6:37 and really didn't get to see my husband until Friday
night.
But now I get to see my boo on like a random Wednesday or Thursday. We can have dinner. And so the bubble has not burst at all.
Yeah. You know? What about for you, Shawn?
No, definitely not. I think she hit the nail on the head. And what I love is that there are so many things I'm accustomed to doing by myself during the week. If I have to go to an after work event or a reception, you call it, and then I'm like, wait a minute, I can actually send a text and say, hey, are you able to go?
Yes.
And 9 times out of 10 it is. I think even that first particular week, I think I dragged her out to like 2 events just in that week around the holiday.
Yes.
And I said, well, get used to it. This is the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
So, because Jessica is so in the public eye, you're in the public eye somewhat, but in a different arena. She's everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Was it ever intimidating for you in terms of, being out together? We were talking about before we came on air, my husband and I would go out, and one night someone mistakenly called him Mr. Ham. And his response was, I'm Maxie Lee. However, I'm happy to tell my father-in-law you said hello. So does that happen to you?
It happens, and it has happened. I'll
Yes.
let you share that one, but no, never intimidated. I think it's important to know who you are in the roles, in the relationships, and those roles change even during the midst of various seasons there. But for me, I always kind of saw myself as a behind-the-scenes type of guy with various walks of life and then serving in the community and ministry and things of that nature. And so to me, it was just, what do I need to do to prop up my wife, in this time, in this season here? And so it never was a threat in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, that is so wonderful, Jessica.
He's so fine. Well, Barbara, you mentioned that, and I had been in other relationships or situationships, as sometimes they're called, but that someone would lead with what I did instead of who I was. And Shawn was always about who am I as a person. And that was a huge signal to me that this was something God was putting together.
And so we both were members of the Young Professional chapter. And I'm embarrassed, 2012?
2012.
2012.
You're getting the dates right.
I keep them in my phone. 2012, I was honored as the Young Professional of the Year. And ironically, Jessica and her best friend, Ariane, actually gave me that award on stage. And so that's when I first met Jessica. And we stayed relatively friendly, right, just because we were a part of that organization. But I think it obviously wasn't until 2014, and I kind of let you take it from there when we really kind of reconnected there.
So, yeah, we knew each other, and we had mutual friends. We were in similar circles, but it was just like a high and by kind of thing, right? It wasn't that whole, oh, I saw you on the stage and then sparks flew.
Walking across the stage in slow motion.
There's my husband, Jesus. No, that is not how it was. But a few years later, after we met, it was a Saturday.
This is why I let her tell the story,
because she remembers the details.
and she's a storyteller. Right?
Yes.
Well, it was a Saturday. Norfolk State was having a game, and all of my girlfriends who were supposed to come with me to the game, they all had other things going on. They could no longer come, and I almost didn't go. But it was such a beautiful day. I said, you know what? I'm going to go to the game by myself. Like I can connect with people. I'll be fine by myself. And so I got to the game. Didn't run into anybody. I said, oh, Lord. So I sat down on a bench. I got on Facebook, and I saw that Sean from the Urban League, because I wasn't really sure. That's who he was. Sean from the Urban League. He had on there that they were doing voter registration. And I said, oh, he's probably with, a group of people that I know. And so I messaged him on Facebook while at the game, like, hey, are you guys still here? What 10 are you guys at? I'd love to come to join you. And he said, oh, we just left, but I'm still here. I can meet you in the parking lot. And then we met up, and that was our first real deep conversation that lasted 2 or 3 hours walking around campus.
Why is faith such an important part of your journey?
That's a good one. It's I hate to sound so like a cliche. It's the foundation. It really is. And the beautiful thing is that I had my own spiritual journey. She had her own spiritual journey. And when they came together, it was really just a seamless process, if I can call it as such. And I thought about this as I was driving here. When we first started dating, we dated via reading spiritual books.
Wow.
Our first dates were T.D. Jakes' Instincts was book number 1. The second book was a book called Loveology, which talks about the foundation of God as he views it towards marriage and Adam and Eve and then things of that nature. And then we read a book about finances and how those things get intertwined. So we knew from day one is that in order for this to be successful, and again, that cliche of if you don't have that firm foundation, then we're not going to make it in the long run. And we still live by that to this day.
Yeah, that was, I know because we had our own individual walks with God, that we were more easily able to recognize who we were to each other when the time was right. Yes, we met in 2012, but it wasn't our time, and, but when 2014 came around, a lot can happen in those 2 years.
Sure.
And I think we both had a different set of eyes to see who we were to each other. And I think it's funny sometimes to look back at old pictures, and sometimes we see one of us in the background of a picture, and it's like we had no idea. No, even one picture that was taken even 5 or 6 months before we started dating, and we're both in the background of each other's pictures, and it's like we had no idea. But God has shown us so much grace and mercy and favor, and we both have this same heart of, okay, so what do we do with that?
There we go.
We recognize and believe that the love we get to experience with each other that has spilled over with our families loving each other, that this is a miracle, right? And the reality is everybody won't get to experience that.
Yeah.
It is my prayer that everyone gets to experience their own version of a miracle type of love, but it doesn't happen without God. And I've had friends ask, like, okay, so what did you do for this to happen? And the answer is, it's just God.
And and the love runs deep in this family. Jessica and Sean recently took a family trip to South Africa to celebrate Sean's parents' 50th wedding anniversary. Virginia's Eastern Shore is so tiny that it's sometimes left off the Virginia maps. But this peninsula has a rich history, and its future is being threatened by climate change and sea level rise. We hear about the resilience of residents on the Eastern Shore and how they are dealing with real changes to their way of life, as portrayed in the documentary Against the Current: Life on the Eastern Shore. This documentary, which aired nationally, was produced by WHRO Public Media, and Another View producer Lisa Godley is the film's executive producer. One of the things that struck me about the documentary is the number of people who won, like you did, Thelonious, who went away, went to college, kind of did their thing, came back to farm or to be on the water, and now are having children, and they want to leave that legacy. I mean, so it's like nobody's saying we want to go away because of climate change.
Well, it's such a beautiful part of the country, and you understand why they love it so much. I mean, and there is a love for it from the people who live there. They absolutely love living on the Eastern Shore. So you understand why they would want to pass this on, this community on to their children, because it's just a beautiful part of the country. But there's a battle going on there because the water levels are rising. And it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't have to be a hurricane. It doesn't have to be a nor'easter, just stuff we've been having lately, these heavy rains. And then you get some strong winds coming in, and there's a problem.
You talked about in the doc and had photos of where they had to float the house across the water. Hog Island.
Yes.
That's what it was.
Hog Island was once populated, and there was a whole community there. And eventually, because of storms, hurricanes, just devastating that area. And that was a barrier island. And the barrier islands are incredibly important to the Eastern Shore because they're blocking and keeping things from eroding away. And so people would live on that barrier island, and several other barrier islands were occupied at one point. But the storms and everything got so intense, they just could not. The government told them, we can't protect you here. You need to move. That's why they floated those houses on the waterway to other parts of the shore. Yeah.
So, Thelonious, do you worry that your farm at some time will be underwater?
Yeah, 100%. And like I say, after a few days of rain and you see where some fields are saturated, that is definitely a concern. And so I'm constantly, building raised beds and stuff like that. Also planting a diversity of things like trees, fruit trees, other things, because it may get harder growing like annual crops.
Mm-hmm. So now our phone lines are lit up because I knew that they would start calling in. Hi, Andrea joins us from Onancock. Hi, Andrea. You're on the air.
Thank you very much for taking my call. I'm a huge fan of the show.
Thank you so much.
And really enjoying today's program, but I just have to kind of chuckle at the irony. Today I'm able to listen because normally I work in the Accomack County on the Eastern Shore public schools, but we're closed today because of high waters.
Oh, wow.
All the rain, and it is really difficult, particularly on the bay side, for buses to go pick up our students. And so all of Accomack County public schools are closed today because of the high water.
Oh, my goodness. So do you guys go to virtual, or is that an issue also?
Yes. We go to virtual, and, all the students report in to their teachers on their computers, and we're well prepared for that. All the students have packets of supplies and assignments that they have always at the ready at home for such a day as this. So it's well cared for, but it's happening more and more.
Since Against the Current first premiered on WHRO and later World Channel in April of last year, more than 40,000 people have viewed the film on various social media platforms. This is the best of Another View 2024. Please hold your calls. Each month, the amazing ladies who make up the Another View Roundtable join us for thought-provoking conversation. One example was in September of last year, when Dr. Alvian Lyons shared some insight into what Black women are facing in corporate America.
we were not afforded the ability to be multidimensional human beings, right? Where our European counterparts could be whole people, right? They could have the full breadth and range of emotion without it being interpreted through a lens that made things that are completely human and normal into something that was considered derogatory in some way, or to demonize the emotion. Like, we weren't allowed to be all of those things. We were only allowed to have one or two emotions. And generally it was either joy or sadness. But rage was problematic because it was seen as animalistic. So when they used criminal images, it was often a person of color who played the criminal in things, right? Because dark was scary, right? So we saw that even with our Native American brothers and sisters. When you look at black and white movies, the Indians were always the evil people because the dark skin made them scary because they were native, right? So we make them primal and animalistic. We have a history in America that only allowed for that full array of humanness to be represented by our European brothers and sisters. Mm-hmm. So when that has been inbred into the psyche of who we are, the collective consciousness or unconsciousness, many of us who have learned to be successful in spaces that are not homogenous, as in they're not all black spaces. Quite frankly, many of us are in all white spaces. Our success has been in our ability to measure how much of us can show up in this space and be fully accepted. And when you figure that out, it's kind of the Oprah effect. And that's when you run into the next thing that happens is the exceptionalism. And that is when
you're not like those other black people.
You're not them, right?
Exactly.
So they take you out of your culture, and there's an honesty and freedom that they can speak when you're around that they don't speak when some of your colleagues are present in the room, because you're almost honorary one of us. And in that space, that becomes our responsibility as people who have access to the axis of power to be able to use that to move the needle for those who don't have access. And that doesn't mean against anyone. It just means for everyone.
We welcome the Roundtable into the Another View studio the second Thursday of each month to share their perspectives on an array of topics. So make sure you tune in for our next conversation, which is next week. In May of 2024, a Virginia Beach high school baseball team forfeited its season because of racism and harassment among members of its own team. So we asked the question, is this behavior part of the reason why more and more African Americans are not playing America's pastime? We examined the relationship between the African American community and the game of baseball. Note, Virginia Beach City Public Schools is a member of the Hampton Roads Educational Telecommunications Association, which holds the broadcast license for WHRO.
From what I was told from other people I've interviewed, assistant coaches knew. I also knew that several players knew, and I didn't put this in the column. I wish I had, but I didn't. If you hear these things going on and you're not doing nothing, you're just as responsible as the people saying it. So you got to speak out. If you hear things being said to the other kids and you know what's wrong, speak out.
Jerry, you went to Tech for track, yes, but you also played baseball and other sports all along. Are you surprised to hear that in 2024 this is still happening?
No, I'm not surprised in the least. And I'm afraid is a problem that's not going to go away anytime soon. Of course, I saw it at Tech, but in so many ways, the big enemy here is actually ignorance. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know there's a problem, how are you going to address it? Mm-hmm. And a lot of these people don't know that these are issues. So they don't even, they'll do what they do thinking that they're being all right. I can't tell you how many times I have done a scripture reading at one of my former students' weddings or something. Mm-hmm. And older people will come up and tell me just how well I read that. And
you're so articulate.
Yes. And so that's all part of, and you have to smile through it. But, being an ambassador and a diplomat can be exhausting, and a lot of times it can be frustrating.
Absolutely. If you're just joining us, we're talking about The Color of Baseball with award-winning sports journalist Larry Rubama with the Virginian Pilot and Jerry Gaines, retired educator, administrator, and coach in the Chesapeake school system and a former baseball player and track star and everything else. Chuck joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Chuck. You're on the air.
Very good show. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
The term that I read in the New York Times a number of years ago about urban areas being blacked out, not having facilities for African American kids. And I think in those same areas, they also have great football programs and basketball programs. But I do agree one of the biggest thing about all of baseball is AAU. And the travel is expensive. AAU controls it. There's no development going on in Little League Baseball. And African American kids also don't have the entree from their parents' history in the sport. But I think it's very difficult. I went through the same experience with my own boys. And the other argument that is always put up is that there are so many other activities for children, not just African American kids, but all kids, that they don't gravitate to baseball anymore. But I'd like to hear you talk about that, blacked out areas where I think that, I don't know if it's easy to get to those young athletes to get them into baseball.
Okay, thanks so much for the call, Chuck. Larry, you want to respond?
Yeah, when I grew up in Syracuse, New York, we had was a group of us, probably about 12 to 15 of us that played different sports. And I was the only one who focused on baseball. The other ones played basketball. The other ones played football. And to them, they were just like, I don't want to do it. And I was the only black kid. Now on my team, I'm talking about in the whole league.
Wow.
And you talk about the pressures of doing that. And you have to go out there and prove yourself each and every time. I played baseball for 5 years. In my 6th year, I finally had another black kid who played it. They put him on my team. And he was horrible. But I just remember of what it was like. It was like, wow, I get to see another person who actually looks like me that plays the game. And you think about it. Put yourself in a situation where you're the only one that looks like you. Yeah. And you're going out there playing a sport like baseball where you're failing a lot of times. And you got to go out there and try to prove yourself each and every time. That's, as we talked about earlier, that's a lot of stress constantly. So you think about, I'm thinking about the Upton brothers that came out of here, BJ and Justin Upton, who made history in being one drafted number 1, one drafted number 2. Their father still trying to pour into the young black kids in our area. But I can't imagine what they went through, even as talented as they were. As much money as they made, the pressures that they have to continue to keep doing that. And, you know, again, there's not many of us who look like us who are playing that game. Yeah. And so it's a lot of pressure and stress that you're dealing with each and every time you step on that field. You can't just go out there and have fun playing baseball. You're out there having to prove yourself.
Jerry, what was it like when you played?
Interestingly enough, when I was a little kid, there was a Little League Baseball then, and there were far more black players then. But, of course, we couldn't play with white players. But, believe it or not, my father started a team in 1959. Wow. We had 2 white players. One guy's name was Herbie and another guy's name was Frankie. We went to play a black team, and the black team wouldn't play us because we had 2 white players.
Wow. So it went the other way, too.
So it did. My father said, well, if they don't play, we don't play. So what he did was he loaded us all up and took us back home. He divided the team in half, and we played each other on Saturdays. But my father was a very unusual man. What scares me more than anything is how money is infecting all of sport, not just baseball. But baseball is a huge deal. And because, and like the caller just said, you have to have little leagues and coaches that are interested and people who are actively involved. The cost factor is one thing, the personnel is another, the skill set is another, and black kids just are going to fall short on all of those counts.
Wow. Larry, isn't this the season where they're doing the championship games for the high schoolers in Virginia?
In fact, I'll be covering
right now.
We got 6, 7 teams going to the state tournament.
So when you go out to look at those, how many black kids do you see? Any?
I count them on one hand, both teams.
Wow.
Yeah, there's not many.
And will most of those kids that are playing at this level for high school go on to college to continue to play, do you think?
If they're fortunate, a lot of them don't. This is it. This is when they finish high school. It's it. You got to be extremely good playing. It doesn't even count about your high school team. It's about the teams you're playing on in the summertime. They're going to get you those looks. Again, going to those.
So the scouts aren't coming to the high school games.
I'm not saying they won't, but for the most part, they're going.
But for the most part, they're going to those showcases.
And if you're with the right company, they'll give you the number of stars that you need to be looked at, and other schools will look at the stars that you have that you did. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. As that caller just said, if you don't have the money, you might as well forget about it.
In June of last year, Kempsville named Luke Stice as the new varsity baseball coach. Stice previously served as Kempsville's JV baseball coach. He served our country as a Marine Corps infantry officer. He's highly educated with degrees from the United States Naval Academy, Harvard Business School, and Harvard Kennedy School. He's a management consultant, advising Fortune 500 companies, municipalities, and nonprofits on strategy, marketing, organization, and operations across all industries. So why is this highly accomplished individual devoting his life and career to the well-being of the city of Newport News? Last June, we found out when Newport News Mayor Philip Jones was our guest. Let me ask you a question. Do you get pushback when people say, oh, you just don't have any experience, you're so young?
I think I got that maybe within the first 2 months, but what I push back on the campaign trail is there are members of Congress that are 27 and 28. I led 200 men on 4 continents, and I think you'd be hard-pressed to find someone with that experience locally or in politics. Everything that I've learned has come from the Marine Corps. It's not the business. It's not the Harvard side. It's the Naval Academy. It's leading and serving with, I think, the best of America in North Africa, in Asia, in Europe. That's where I was taught leadership, and I try to bring that to Newport News. So no, I don't. I push back on the too young. I do.
So let's talk about Philip Jones. Okay, the person, because you were born in Japan, Okinawa. So how did you get to Newport News?
So was born in Okinawa, Japan, and I tell everyone my story is really the story of my parents. Mom and dad were both Air Force Academy graduates. My mom was basically the third class that allowed women in. So they trailblazers the entire time. And so my dad was a pilot. My mom was a navigator. They had me in Okinawa, Japan, and we moved around a lot. But they retired at a Langley Air Force Base. So we moved to the area when I was in 5th grade, and we never left. So I've been a kid of the peninsula of Newport News and Hampton for, middle school all the way
because
up.
You went to the Marines instead of and the Naval Academy instead of the Air Force.
Tremendous, and I did the opposite. So mom and dad are pilots; they're in the air, and I went infantry, right? So I did the exact opposite. I had no intention to fly. I love the Marine Corps. It is the biggest part of my identity. I think it's the best service, tip of the spear, etc. And it's not because what you do, but who you serve with. And I tell everyone, the Marines that I served with were not the strongest or the fastest or the brightest, but they were the willing. And I can work with the willing.
And so after you did the Marine Corps, then you went to Harvard.
I did.
Right. At what point did you pledge Omega Psi Phi? And why Q?
So I pledged in undergrad. I'm spring 2010. So I've been in 14 years. I've been in 14 years. I've pledged 2 lines. No, Omega, they sought me out. And they say Omega seeks no man, but everyone that I wanted to be like at the Naval Academy, in the Marine Corps, Charles Bolden, etc., were men of Omega. And so I tried to emulate that, and I was just very fortunate to be selected and go through that process. So I actually did that during my undergrad experience. So I did the Naval Academy, when I pledged, did 6 years in the Marine Corps with 2 deployments being Southeast Asia, Africa, Asia, etc. Europe. Got out in 2018. And that's when I did my 3 years at Harvard.
What made you decide not to make it a 20-year career?
I wanted to have just a different influence on life. And I'm still going to do my 20-year career in the reserves.
Because you're in the reserves, right?
Exactly. The way I look at it is servant leadership. And it's just being mayor is a natural extension to what I was doing in the Marine Corps. And ultimately, I look back at our community and I said, I think I can... my favorite book is The Spook Who Sat by the Door, right? I have all this knowledge, hopefully, that I'm gaining at Harvard. Let me take whatever I'm able to learn and bring it back to my community. So the goal was to come back in some capacity, either start a bank or do politics, maybe merge the two. And it just happened.
That the politics went out.
Exactly.
So when you take that Harvard education and you're, I understand from reading about you and so forth that you're quite a planner. But how realistic are the plans versus the daily realities of what you have to deal with?
So I would say when I came into mayor, I had the first year plan. And then one day into being mayor, we had the Rich Neck elementary scooting. So, and I realized very quickly that you have to pivot. But the thing I'm most excited about this year is I ran on the campaign trail. I said, we will be an all-America city in the first 4 years, or I will resign. That's what I said, because there has to be accountability, and that's what I ran on. And about 3 weeks ago, we were announced for the first time ever in Newport News history, we were the top 10 cities in America, all-America city. And that is not a reflection of me. That is a reflection of Team Newport News, from our university presidents to our city staff, to our nonprofits, to our pastors, to our everyone in the community. That was a win for the entire community. And what I will say is, on that stage, every single judge said, we had never heard of Newport News. We thought it was 20 or 30,000 people. You are a large city that has acted small, but now you are coming into your own, and you deserve to be on the national stage as a city.
This honor showcases Newport News as one of the best cities in America when it comes to collaborating with residents and diverse stakeholders to tackle local challenges and seize opportunities. You're listening to the Best of Another View 2024 edition. In August of last year, we got up close and personal with the newest leader of Norfolk Redevelopment and Housing, Nathan Sims. He shared with us the work he's done with redevelopment efforts in other cities and his plans for NRHA going forward. So for those who either have a conception of NRHA because of something they've heard in the past or experience it in some other way, what exactly does NRHA do in the city of Norfolk?
A lot. It is a very complicated type of,
but at its core.
At its core, I mean, we are not only just a housing provider in terms of, operating communities, both public housing and non-public housing, and providing housing choice vouchers to many people in the community. We also focus on redevelopment efforts and have done historically around the city. So whether you're talking about something as, small as infill lots throughout a number of different folks, and an organization that has helped in terms of the transformation of East Beach, that has worked in the transformation of Stonebridge and Broad Creek and just all different Waterside. I mean, just a lot of different places across the city that this organization, the Main, is another, has been, we haven't developed those, but we help assemble parcels that led to a lot of different things. So we've done a lot across the city historically, whether people sometimes know it or not.
So, and when you say infill, that's going into established neighborhoods and redoing some of the houses. If you got a vacant lot
in your neighborhood and we owned it, and all of a sudden the dirt opened up and there's a house next to you, 9 times out of 10, we probably had something to do with that.
Okay, but so would you consider NRHA more on the redevelopment side or the housing side? Now that under your leadership, what's your focus?
I think it's a little bit of both. I don't think you can do redevelopment without housing, and you can't do housing without redevelopment. And so I think that's the part. I mean, how we define it, I think is what is the interesting part to me. Some things are transformational. And so we have those opportunities across the city, and other things are standard in terms of there's a piece of property there. What do we want to see there? But I think, for me, it's always about trying to create the type of housing that people can see themselves in. Whether you see yourself of, hey, I live in this community isn't where it is I want it to be right now, but it will be. And when it is, I can still live here. Or the person who is, I'm aging. We're all getting older, right? America's getting older, not younger. It is what it is. And so, you want to be able to know that I can stay. My unit is configured, or my home is configured in a way that allows me to stay and age in it, versus now I have to figure out where to go. It's not an option. So I think it's just trying to take advantage advantage of those opportunities. We serve a lot of people, and so it's very catalytic to our economy as well.
So you're doing some renovations in Diggstown.
Correct.
Right. Tell us a little bit about that, and I think it's upgrading what was already there. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we've been working. Well, we've been doing a lot of things over the last couple of years, and so part of it has just been some of our modernization efforts. We are getting ready in the coming years to do full scale renovations at both Diggstown, which we divide into Diggstown 1 and Diggstown 2. So Diggstown 1 is 103 units. That's where we're going to focus on, but also Oakley Forest, which is right across the street. So what we've been doing is trying to just make sure that we have a good handle on the current situation of our units, the modernization of our units. So that's been kind of an ongoing piece as we begin to kind of assess what the pathway will be to ultimately redevelop those.
So let's talk about the people side.
Yes.
Because people have a perception that if you are a resident of an NRHA project, especially in the public housing communities, that it's not a very good perception. Tell people who are truly the residents that come and are able to have homes because of the work that NRHA does.
So I would say this broadly. I mean, 9 times out of 10, you're coming into contact with somebody who lives in an NRHA community or is a benefactor of a resource that NRHA affords. And so I think that's very important to really kind of say, because even the people that we serve, where you think of public housing, you're thinking, okay, this person is automatically low income. We have individuals who are very sufficient in terms of that and make very good money. Don't need to live in a public housing per se, just choose to. And so, that's one.
And they pay a different rent than someone who
nearly paying full market rent in some ways. And so, and then obviously we have folks who do not, but they too are, many of them are working and taking care of their families in a lot of ways and work. I mean, to me, public housing is a part of the affordable housing spectrum, right? I mean, public housing is affordable housing, and people are looking for is housing that they can afford. And so the one thing that NRHA provides in addition to housing is that, I mean, obviously to have that stability and that safety net is a wide array of programs to help people move forward in their lives. So whether we're talking about, I mean, we got everything, right? So whether you're somebody who is looking for, access to college, and we have scholarships available for that, or work in coordination with TCC and NSU and ODU. But we also, have vocational training that we work partnering with a number of different folks on, things for our high school students, things for our children. So there are things to help people who are unemployed, underemployed, who want to change their career. I mean, we just had a graduation over the last couple of days. We partnered with Old Dominion, who partnered with Cox for an entrepreneurship program. And so we had some people participate. And that was one of the benefits. And shout out to Dr. Hemphill and his team for, linking us to that. But we've been taking full advantage of that. And so whether we're talking about internships or just connecting people to our space.
Sims brings more than 20 years' experience to NRHA, working for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for more than a decade, and then as Deputy Director of the D.C. Department of Housing and Community Development. It's an impressive sight, a beautiful sunny day on the highway with a large group of motorcycle enthusiasts riding in formation. Adult men and women enjoying the freedom of the road on their 2- or 3-wheeler bikes. Many of these motorcycle clubs are African American, with chapters nationwide. In Hampton Roads, clubs include Buffalo Soldiers, Seven Cities Omens MC, Chesapeake Riders, Afro Dogs, and Thunder Lightning Motorcycle Club, just to name a few. And we learned a lot when we heard from 2 cyclists about the joy of riding, safety issues, and of course, their adventures. Please welcome to Another View, Terry Spoon with a Spoon. He is the president of the Hampton Roads chapter of the National Association of Buffalo Soldiers and Troopers. Hey, Spoon, how are you?
I'm fine. Good afternoon.
Good. I'm going to call you guys by your handles during the show, right? Okay.
Sounds good.
and Janice Alexander, or Lady J, who rides a magnificent three-wheeler at the tender age of 79. You go, girl.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Good afternoon.
How are you? Thanks.
I'm doing well.
So I'm curious about your stories, like what got you into riding. And Janice, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
Excuse me, Lady J.
My daughter, Harley girl, was riding and watched her ride, and I said to myself, I want to do that. So I started off with a trike in 2012 to see if I really, enjoyed the sport, and I never looked back. So when I retired in 2014, I bought myself a new Harley.
Wow.
And I just call it wind therapy. Love it, love it, love it. Yeah.
So Spoon, what got you started?
Just a love for two wheels. I've been doing it for about 40 years. Started when I was like 15. I always enjoyed working on things, and I got my hands on a little mini bike, and I rebuilt it, and that was my start. And been riding some type of two wheels ever since.
How do you become a member of the Hampton Roads chapter?
The biggest thing is to come and hang around, see what we do. We want to be able to see if you fit us and we fit you. We want to make sure that everybody is on the same playing field. But that's typically a hang around period of 8 to 9 months. After you hang around for a while, you put on a presentation about the history of the Buffalo Soldiers, because that's what we're about. So we want to make sure that you know what the history is when it concerns Buffalo Soldiers. And you have to ride some miles because we are a riding club. So kind of one of your last feats that you have to do is you have to ride 5,000 miles within that 9 to 12 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so once you ride those 5,000 miles and you've done all the community service and did your presentation, and
then you get to be voted on.
Then you get to be voted on.
Carolyn joins us from Suffolk. Hi, Carolyn. You're on the air.
Hello. How are you?
Okay. How are you?
I'm good. So my story is I'm a rider for 8 years. I'm kind of a late bloomer also.
Good.
So what I wanted to share is the fascination of riding is that you see things that you don't see when you're in the car. You smell things, good and bad, that you don't smell when you're in the car. It is just like you're free. It's almost like you're kind of in, I would say, in heaven.
Exhilarating.
Riding around, looking at the world. I mean, it is really fascinating.
So how far have you ridden?
Not that far. Eastern Shore, Richmond, not that far yet. My next goal is to ride a little further. So that's what I'm working on now. But
come ride with me.
You got an invitation here. She said, come ride with her. Thank you so much for the call. We really appreciate it. So what is the allure of the group? Why, what's the difference between riding solo and riding in a group?
The stories.
The
things that happen when you're riding. You could have a breakdown on a motorcycle and you can make it fun. So it's just the ride, the friendship, the fellowship, here again, back to the mindset that we all just love riding.
Okay, let's see if we can talk to Nita, I believe, in Virginia Beach.
Yes, hi. Thank you for taking my call today. I have a 22-year-old son who has wanted to ride a motorcycle since he was 18. I'm petrified that he will die in an accident or worse because of youth and inexperience. So I was wondering if you have any advice for me, or if there's a group that he can join that's like age appropriate for him.
That's a great question.
Yeah, the biggest thing is to go to one of your local safety riding classes where he can actually learn the basic fundamentals, the rules of the road, how to operate the bike properly, how to accelerate, how to stop, how to lean, how to turn. They teach you all of that in that class. Lady J spoke about it earlier. Harley Davidson does it, TCC. That would be your first place to start. As far as a actual club that he can join, I would be honest, I'm not familiar with a club of that age group that would be appropriate, just because I don't know a club of that age. But definitely going to the class and taking his time, choosing his bike wisely. You don't want to get something too big, too fast. It's kind of like buying your first car. You don't go out and buy a Corvette until you learn how to really drive. You might want to get that Volkswagen. So it's kind of the same thing with bikes. You really want to learn how to ride before you jump on the fastest bike out there.
Much like the Buffalo Soldiers, many of the clubs make it a priority to give back to their communities, and you may have spotted some of them handing out turkeys or toys in recent weeks. You're listening to the Best of Another View 2024 edition. Please hold your calls. Here at Another View, we care about your quality of life. That's why once a month, cardiologist Dr. Keith Newby joins me here in the studio, and we focus on health. Earlier last year, we discussed sickle cell disease and how it affects 100,000 Americans, most of whom are Black. Sickle cell is a debilitating blood disorder caused by a single mutated gene. We were joined by sickle cell thriver Dr. Simone Yuan, who is the CEO of Sickle Cell Medical Advocacy. Can you describe for us, what you feel, how you feel, what does having sickle cell mean?
Oh, my goodness. That's a very loaded question. On any given day that I'm in a crisis, I feel like, first of all, I'm probably in a fetal position begging for my life. And it feels like, someone that's drowning, how they will just make deals like, God, if you save me, I will be good for the rest of my life. That's kind of the despair that someone feels when they're going through a sickle cell crisis. It's time-sensitive tissue injury on the level of the bone and in the vessels and anywhere that blood flows and it can be blocked by these sickle cells, you can have tissue injury. And when the cells are dying, they send signals out. They essentially are screaming to say, please help us, we're dying.
Wow.
And that's the same kind of sensation you get when you have a heart attack. In fact, the physiology is very similar. So in a heart attack, you have a clogged vessel. It's clogged from plaque. Ours is clogged from sickle cells, but essentially the end result is the same. The tissue gets damaged because there's lack of blood flow, so there's lack of oxygen delivery and nutrients to the tissue of the heart muscle. And so people, will tell you that they feel like there's an elephant on their chest and there's a feeling of doom, that, they feel like they're going to die. And so they present to the emergency room, and it's a quick intervention that has to happen to be able to rescue as much tissue as possible, right? That's the same thing essentially that's happening with sickle cell disease, except it is everywhere that blood flows. So it could be as inconsequential as your pinky or your hand, and it can be as devastating as your lungs, your heart, your brain, your kidney, any organ. Take a pick.
Denise is calling us from Orlando, Florida. So glad that we're like spreading out across the country. Here we go. Hi, Denise. You're on the air.
Hello. How y'all doing?
We're doing good. What's your question or comment?
Well, my comment is that I'm just so grateful to have Sickle Cell Medical Advocacy. It has saved my life tremendously. I'm speaking from 39 years old, and they told my mom I wouldn't be able to see the age of 2. I was diagnosed at the age of 1. Spent my first 5 years in and out of the hospital, mostly in the hospital. But throughout my life, I've dealt with strokes and different things like that, and just trying to keep going, where I did not have like that kind of support there, because my mom used to always be there, but they said that I needed to try to learn how to do it on my own, because my mother was sickly a lot. So therefore, I had to start trying to take this journey and try to just push. And I was in a situation in the hospital, and I was there, and I would just cried out on Facebook, like, hey, can somebody help me? And they gave me Dr. Simone's number and was like, hey, she would like to talk to you. And I mean, when I tell you, I thank God for that, because she saved my life. Literally, they were diagnosing me with pneumonia when I had acute chest syndrome the whole time. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm about to die. You know what I'm saying? Like, these people don't know what they're doing. But just like I said, by God's will, Dr. Simone was able to get me from out of that hospital, get me to another hospital where the doctors would listen, and they listened to everything. And this happened like about 2-3 times. So Dr. Simone, oh my God, deserve all the awards. There he is. You know what I'm saying? We got to make sure that she stays great, and we help, as much as we can. Sickle Cell Medical Advocacy, donate, y'all, do what you can, because it is helping a lot of people.
The Food and Drug Administration has approved 2 new treatments that could eliminate symptoms of the disease, and they have been called a cure. But the treatments are out of reach for most patients because of cost and availability. We've had to ingest a lot this past year. Contentious politics, war, the economy. So we decided to take a break and reflect on all of the things that we're grateful for in our lives. You called in with some wonderful stories, and Lashana Epps, a certified life coach and CEO of A Beautiful Life LLC, joined me in the studio to help guide our journey to gratefulness.
Gratitude is a force. It's a powerful force, and it is something that can completely change your life if you are willing to embody and embrace it and apply it to your daily life. So it's more than just saying thank you. It really is about identifying what is good in my life, okay? And being willing to think about that, and then being willing to feel that and being willing to express that out of your mouth.
It's easy to do when everything's going well.
Yes.
Right? But true gratitude also happens when things are not going well.
Yes. Yes.
How do you pull that out?
You wouldn't know, or you wouldn't appreciate the good if there wasn't on the opposite end of that some not so good. You know what I'm saying? If everything was always kicking up daisies and lilies and roses in the field, then you would take for granted each and every day that this is how life is supposed to be. But it's just unrealistic. I put it like this. Everyone experiences pain in their life. Pain is universal. It's a part of life. Everyone will experience it, and it will show up in many different ways. Okay? And when that pain shows up, you have a choice, because we are the ones that assign meaning to those experiences, okay? And see, this is the thing, and I'm not trying to get into coaching. However, it's not about the problem. Like we like to say, oh, that's a problem, or this problem, or that problem. It's an experience. So you have a choice of what meaning you're going to give to it. So I like to give this little analogy. Let's say you running late for work. You rush out the house, get in your car, you get on the interstate, but unbeknownst to you, there's an accident and you're stuck. You can't get off. There's not an exit.
There's not an exit.
How do you respond? You got 2 people. The first person gets pissed, hits the steering wheel, bleep to bleep, says a few choice words, call in, I'm running late, hangs up. Then they decide to call a friend to whine, murmur, and complain about it. And then they declare, my entire day has been ruined, and it's only 8 o'clock in the morning. Well, the second person, they don't like it, but and you can't see me, audience, I'm inhaling and exhaling, and they do a technique called box breathing.
Okay.
Which is you get a picture in your mind of a box. Is 4 sides. You inhale for 4 seconds, you exhale for 4 seconds, and you do that all the way around, or as many times as you need to. They call the job, I'm running late, release the call, and they pause. And they do something that I like to call the 4 A's. They acknowledge, accept, adapt, and adjust themselves. They acknowledge and accept, I don't have control of this. This is on the outside of me. I can't do anything about this. So then they adapt and adjust themselves, and they say, you know what? I'm not going to see this as a problem. I'm going to see this as an opportunity to do what? I can listen to a preaching, teaching sermon. I can listen to a personal development podcast. I can spend some time affirming myself. And then they pause and they say, and you know what? God, I'm going to say thank you, because you could be protecting me from something that I don't even know about. And they express gratitude. So where do you find yourself in this two-sided analogy here. And you have to locate yourself. You know what I'm saying? Gratitude is something that you have to choose to do. Just like happiness is a choice and you must choose it, you have to choose gratitude as well.
We hope you have enjoyed the Best of Another View 2024 edition. For producer Lisa Godley, audio engineer Jordan Christie, Dr. Barry Graham, and all of the wonderful people who share their insight and talents with us each and every week, thank you. I'm Barbara Ham Lee, and we'd like to wish all of our Another View listeners a safe, happy, and prosperous new year. We'll be back with you live next Thursday at noon for Another View.